What about people who use drugs and they're not really concerned about people's approval so much? Why do you think they'd use them?
When they use drugs, when they reach that level of using drugs and not so much for people's approval, I think it goes into habits. They form the habit of using drugs, and they don't care about people anymore, what they think, because they're used to using the drugs.
But what's the benefit of using them?
For them, there's really life could be no benefit in using them. It's more of habit. They do it because they formed a habit or an addiction, and then they have to rely on the drugs to live.
I've heard some people say they like the experience of drugs, what it does with their minds, and it makes them feel good.
It depends on the drug, but some people would want to use drugs because they can escape the reality. They could live a fantasy, but it isn't real. It doesn't last. It's something that it's an escape that ends up towards a path of destruction. I mean, you're gonna end up in a not so good place if you use drugs just for enjoyment.
Mm-hmm. What about sex?
Sex is good within marriage because you can produce human lives. You can build a family and love have your own child, and that's very important. But sex that's done irresponsibly is not good.
Why?
Because when you're having sex outside of marriage or irresponsibly, like promiscuously, you're damaging yourself because you're not forming a relationship with the person. You're using each other for your bodies. You're not in love. You're like animals, and you're losing your souls. You're really, when you do it inside of marriage, you feel that love, and you're producing that child out of love. When you're doing it outside of marriage, you're using each other.
Some people say that it's okay if both of them use each other, if it's mutual.
Are you talking about Gordon Biersch?
So what do you think? Well, what do you think about those people who say that?
That it's okay to use each other?
Yeah. As long as it's mutual.
Well, I think it goes back into some people. They think it's okay to sin once in a while because they're human, and not that it's right, but they think it's okay to sin once in a while. And I don't think that's very healthy to have that sort of relationship where it's just being used. You're using each other. I think it doesn't produce much fruit.
In terms of what?
Of love. You have no love there. It's just use. It's chaos.
What's the matter with that?
What's the matter with chaos? Well, I mean, life is meant to live. It's meant to love. Life is not meant to die and destroy and kill and.
But how would sex do that? How would using each other produce that other stuff that you're talking
because
about?
There's no real love if you're doing it outside of marriage.
Yeah, but how would eventually that turn into chaos, murder, hate, and all this other stuff that you're talking about? How does that connect?
Because it's a use. You're using each other for your bodies, and you don't feel that love. So at some point, You feel frustrated that you don't have that love. You're just using each other.
And does that transpire into something else? I think I used the wrong word. Transpire? Is that the right word? In other words, that frustration that they gain from using each other, does that result in other effects in their life?
Definitely. In life, most things in life are connected in some way or another. So, if you use each other, it could hurt you emotionally, it could hurt you financially, it could hurt you spiritually, it could hurt you mentally, it could hurt you physically. So it's all connected. It goes on to hurting you in many ways. That's why one has to reflect on before they act. They have to think before they make something happen of the consequences, because there are consequences to every action, and you have to think about those consequences and the ones you want to bring to your life.
What's the importance? What would you tell somebody who didn't believe in God?
Someone who doesn't believe in God would need to keep an open mind and an open heart towards the possibility that there is someone, a programmer that made us all, made everything. That
some people have a problem with that because they don't like the idea that they need forgiven or that they need somebody to answer to. They see it more as master-slave situation.
Expand more on that.
Some people just don't like answering to a higher power.
I don't think that they don't like answering. I think it's that they don't understand who they're answering to. And I think that's what most people's problem is when they don't believe in God. That they don't have that proof, that they feel insecure about it. They feel doubtful that God exists. But that's part of faith. You have to have faith that He exists.
Does it have to do with heaven and hell?
If there's a good and there's a bad, there must be a heaven and a hell. And the hell is where all the people who are bad want to go. And heaven is where all the good people want to go. Now, you have to make that choice in your life. That's where the consequences come in for your actions. You have to act, whether good or bad. And that's your choice. You're free to make that choice. So, if you want to be good, you do what's good. If you want to be bad, you do what's bad. But you make that choice. You're free to make that choice. But you also have to think of the consequences.